Hey, I'm Micah Bhakti. I lead product management for the Lustre team at Intel. So we're going to start off with some legalese. You guys can feel free to read that at length if you want. So the agenda for today, there's four main things that I wanted to talk about. The first one is I wanted to go back in time a little bit, and I wanted to talk about the Lustre community and what was going on maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And then talk about some of the changes that Intel made last year as a result of those and how those relate. Second, I wanted to touch on some of the progress that the Lustre engineering team has made over the last 12 months in putting features into Lustre. Third, I'm going to highlight the talks that Intel is going to be giving over the next couple of days. And then fourth, I wanted to wrap up by talking about Intel providing technical support for Lustre and how end customers and software storage resellers can provide that support to their end customers. So if we start by going backwards, and okay, sorry, it takes a second to update. If we start by going backwards and we look at the Lustre community 5 or 6 years ago, there were a number of different vendors that were looking to provide differentiated solutions for Lustre software and support. And one way to do that was to create a branch of Lustre and to land your features into that specific branch. And that's what Intel had decided to do with Enterprise Edition. We did feature development, and we landed those features into Enterprise Edition, and then after a period of time, we would backport those back into the community. And what we found over time working within customers is that created overall fragmentation because there were a number of different vendors that were providing their own unique Lustre solutions. And so if a customer wanted to move to the latest version of Lustre, sometimes they were on a branch that was incompatible with newer versions of Lustre. The other thing that happened is for our engineering team, we were putting features into Enterprise Edition, and then we'd be moving those same features back into the community release. And so there was kind of an overall duplication of effort for getting a feature landed into the long-term tree of Lustre. So we sat down and we kind of looked at our overall strategy, and what we decided to do is we decided to merge Enterprise Edition back into the community. And we discontinued that release, and then we took all the features that were into that, and we put them in the community Lustre tree. And we did that to try to create a canonical release of Lustre that would be a single path forward for customers to be able to get the latest and greatest releases of Lustre. And our overall hope was that that would kind of spur the community to all get around developing one tree of Lustre and make sure that features were all landed into the community tree. And that it would also allow us to focus on a specific place where we could accelerate the pace of features going into Lustre to provide newer things faster into the community. So if we look at the last 12 months of what we've put out from the engineering team at Intel, the first thing is Lustre 2.10. That's the first long-term support release, or LTS. And what that means is that we provide maintenance releases to the community for free for 2.10. That's something that previously we'd reserve just for our Enterprise Edition customers. So that was a big change. And as Peter touched on earlier, the adoption of 2.10 based on that has been really fast. And people are really embracing that. So I think that's a really positive sign that the LTS type of release is being well received by the community. There was also a number of big features that went into 2.10. We had snapshots land in there. We had progressive file layouts, which allows for dynamic file striping. We had project quotas land in there. And we had LNet multi-rail, which allowed for aggregation of multiple network connections for increased bandwidth. We also just recently, in the last couple weeks, put out 2.11. 2.11 is the first Lustre feature release that includes data on MDT, which allows for you to improve small file performance by allocating those small files directly to the MDT storage. And it also has positive impacts on streaming I/O because those small files aren't blocking the overall streaming storage. The second thing we did was we had a number of proprietary tools that we had developed along with Enterprise Edition for Lustre, including the Intel Manager for Lustre console. And as part of this overall decision, we decided to open source all those components and make them available for free via GitHub. So anybody here in the room now can go onto GitHub, you can contribute to Intel Manager for Lustre, and you can use that in whatever projects you want to. And then the last thing we did is we have a number of features that Intel's actively developing into Lustre, around performance, scalability, and resiliency as we drive Lustre forward towards the overall goal of exascale. So to touch on a couple of the talks that you'll see from Intel over the next couple days, after this, Andreas is going to kick off with Lustre 2.12, and some of the following releases for that, and talk about the features that Intel and others are putting into those versions of Lustre. Then tomorrow, Joe's going to talk about small file I/O performance using data on MDT, and then a couple other methods for improving small file I/O. Andreas is going to talk about ZFS improvements, both going into Lustre and going into the ZFS project in order to improve the performance of ZFS underneath Lustre. And then Amir is going to talk about the LNet roadmap, and then more specifically about multi-rail usage with NASA. And then Thursday, Joe's going to be talking about the IML roadmap, now that IML's been open sourced, and about community involvement and contributions to that program. So the last thing I want to touch on to wrap up is where end users can get support for Lustre from Intel. Traditionally, Intel provided support for Lustre through authorized storage partners, but more recently we expanded that to also provide support directly to end users. And what we found out of that was that when an end user would run into a bug and they'd want to resolve that, they didn't always know if they should go to their storage vendor or if they should come to Intel directly, and so it created overall confusion. So what we're doing going forward is we're continuing to provide deep technical support for Lustre to our authorized storage partners, and then they own the relationship with the customer. So if the customer comes to them and wants to find out if there's an issue with their storage or with Lustre, that storage partner can help them resolve the issue, and if it's with Lustre, they can come to the team, the Lustre team at Intel, and get that support to resolve the issue in Lustre and deploy those fixes to all of their end customers. We also previously required that storage partners buy Lustre directly through Intel. And for some partners in different geos, that was difficult to process. And so what we've done now is we've enabled a number of authorized distributors around the world to be able to take orders for Intel Lustre and process those. And then the storage partners, when they have an issue, that issue escalates directly to the engineering team at Lustre. We resolve that issue, and they can deploy it in the field. So I just want to wrap up by saying if you're an end user and you're trying to get a solution and you want to make sure that it's backed by Intel support, you can reach out to us directly and we can provide a list of authorized resellers that can provide you Lustre solutions backed by Intel support. And if you're a storage partner and you want to find out how you can engage with us, or you're already engaged with us and you want to find out if there's any changes to how you process orders, you can reach out to us and we can get you set up with our authorized distributors, and we can make sure that you're able to put out solutions that are backed by Intel's deep technical support. That's it. Questions?
Questions for Micah?
Till a few years ago, also had Amazon Amazon Cloud Lustre implementation available to the public.
Yeah.
So is it going to be available anytime soon again? Because I know it's discontinued for some.
So we do have an offering for Lustre on Amazon Web Services. It's deployed on top of the hypervisor, so it's a service that runs out of Marketplace. It is available today. It's been available. We haven't made any changes to that, and we provide technical support for that. There's a couple different versions. There's a version that has support from Intel, and there's also a self-support version. If you're already Lustre savvy and you just want to launch the AMI images from CloudFormation, you can do that as well. So yeah, anybody interested in that can reach out for more information, but we do provide and support Lustre on AWS.
Okay, because I basically read somewhere that it has been discontinued or the support got discontinued, but from what you are saying, it's not true anymore.
Yeah, no, I think there's also been some information that's kind of gone out through various like blogs and things like that that hasn't been accurate.
Okay.
So if people do have questions, like reach out to us directly and ask. But yeah, there's no changes around providing Lustre on AWS. Mm-hmm.
Other questions?
Yeah, and if anybody has any questions that you think of later or just want to kind of ask in a more personal situation, just shoot me an email or grab me in the hall and we can sit down and take some time and chat through things.
All right, I had one question for you. At the end, you were saying storage partners would buy Intel Lustre. I assume that's like a contract or like not a particular version of Lustre, but...
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question. So they would buy support for Lustre from Intel. So we provide support services from our engineering team, and then they would use the community releases of Lustre.